April 6th, 1917. The SS Vaterland sat motionless in New York Harbor, her massive bulk casting shadows across the Hudson River, like a steel monument to a war that had finally reached American shores. In the ship's cramped crew quarters, Kapitän Heinrich Zimmermann pressed his fountain pen against a scrap of paper, his hand trembling slightly, as he wrote words that would contradict everything he had been told about American barbarism. We expected chains and bread crusts. Instead, they gave us coffee and asked about our families. When Congress declared war on Germany that morning, 1,373 German nationals aboard interned merchant vessels became America's first prisoners of the Great War. Unlike the massive prisoner populations that would flood American camps in the next World War, these men represented a small but significant psychological experiment. What happened when a nation founded on democratic principles encountered enemy combatants for the first time in an industrial conflict? The answer would shock both captors and captured alike. Zimmermann and 47 other officers from the Vaterland's crew found themselves aboard a Pennsylvania Railroad passenger train 3 days later, traveling south through the Virginia countryside toward Hot Springs, North Carolina. Through the windows, they watched American farmland roll past in the soft April light fields that showed no signs of war, no evidence of the total mobilization that had transformed European landscapes into industrial wastelands. The conductor offered us newspapers, wrote Obermatt Friedrich Grasshoff in his diary, discovered decades later in the Drew University digital collections. American newspapers, in English, with photographs of the Western Front. He seemed genuinely puzzled when we refused. "Don't you want to know what's happening?" he asked. We had expected propaganda, not genuine curiosity about our welfare. The Mountain Park Hotel in Hot Springs had been transformed into an internment facility with remarkable speed. Federal authorities scrambling to accommodate suddenly designated enemy aliens had requisitioned the luxury resort and its surrounding grounds, installing barbed wire around the perimeter while maintaining the hotel's essential character. The result was surreal. A prison that retained the marble lobbies, crystal chandeliers, and mountain views of its peacetime existence. As Zimmermann's group disembarked at the Hot Springs depot, they carried their personal effects in sea chests and traveling trunks that still smelled of coal smoke and salt air. Camp clerks inventoried each item with meticulous care: musical instruments, family photographs, changes of civilian clothing, even a ship's chronometer that one engineering officer had salvaged from the Vaterland's bridge. Each possession received a property tag stamped with black ink, a ritual that somehow managed to be both bureaucratic and respectful. They handled my violin case as if it contained something precious, noted Musikmat Hans Weber, a ship's musician whose instrument would soon anchor the camp's surprisingly sophisticated cultural life. The American sergeant asked if I played professionally. When I said yes, he smiled and said the camp needed good music. I thought he was mocking me until I learned about the Sunday concerts. The psychological impact of this treatment cannot be overstated. These German sailors had spent months reading propaganda about American industrial weakness and moral decay. They had been told that capture meant torture, starvation, and death. Instead, they found themselves assigned to hotel rooms with running water, electric lights, and mountain views that reminded many of the Bavarian Alps. The first meal provided the greatest shock. Rather than the bread crusts and thin soup they had anticipated, the internees received the same rations distributed to American soldiers at the post: beef, potatoes, vegetables, and white bread in quantities that many hadn't seen since before the war. The food arrived on metal trays, carried by American soldiers who seemed genuinely concerned about their charge's comfort. They asked if we needed anything else, wrote Bootsman Karl-Heinz Mueller, whose letters to his family in Hamburg survived in the New York Public Library archives. Salt, pepper, more coffee. One soldier noticed I was left-handed and moved my cup to the correct side of my tray. Such small kindnesses, but they shattered every assumption we carried about American character. The medical examination that followed revealed the full extent of American organizational efficiency. Military doctors processed each internee with systematic thoroughness, recording health conditions, previous injuries, and medical needs in leather-bound ledgers that would later become crucial historical documents. When several men showed signs of malnutrition from their final months aboard ship, the camp physician prescribed additional rations and vitamin supplements. Dr. Patterson examined my teeth like a dentist, not a military officer, recalled Maschinenrat Ernst Hoffmann in his post-war memoir. He explained that poor nutrition could cause permanent damage and that proper food would restore my health within weeks. He spoke to me as if I were a patient, not an enemy. This confused me more than kindness alone. It suggested they planned to keep us healthy, which implied they planned to keep us alive. The barracks assignments further contradicted German expectations. Rather than overcrowded cells or underground dungeons, the internees found themselves housed in heated wooden buildings with individual bunks, lockers for personal belongings, and common areas for socializing. The accommodations were Spartan but comfortable, designed to meet international standards established by the Hague Conventions of 1899 and 1907. Most remarkably, the American guards maintained professional courtesy without the brutality that characterized prison camps in Europe. Orders were given politely, questions were answered honestly, and requests for reasonable accommodations were generally granted. When Kapitän Zimmermann asked about correspondence privileges, the camp commander explained the postal regulations with patience and even provided writing materials. "I wrote to my wife that evening," Zimmermann recorded. "The first letter I had been able to send in 4 months. The American censor read it, of course, but he returned it with corrections in pencil and suggestions for words that might pass more easily. He treated my personal correspondence as if it mattered, as if my family's worry was worth consideration." By the end of their first week at Hot Springs, the German internees had experienced a fundamental challenge to their understanding of warfare, captivity, and national character. They had arrived expecting the brutality they had been told was inherent in democratic societies. Instead, they encountered efficiency, organization, and humanity on a scale that many found more disturbing than outright cruelty would have been. The transformation had begun. The reveille whistle at Hot Springs cut through the mountain air at 6 a.m. sharp, its metallic shriek echoing off the hotel's limestone walls and mixing with the distant sound of coal-fired locomotives bringing supplies up from Asheville. For Obermaat Friedrich Grasshoff, that morning call became the metronome of an existence that challenged everything he thought he knew about American efficiency and German superiority. "The Americans run their camps like a ship," he wrote in his diary on May 15th, 1917. "Every detail planned, every contingency anticipated. Yet there is no cruelty in their precision, only a methodical kindness that unsettles us more than brutality would." The daily routine at internment camps across America revealed the profound organizational capacity of a nation mobilizing for industrial war. At Fort Oglethorpe in Georgia, 2,847 German and Austrian internees woke each morning to the same systematic efficiency that processed them through meals, work details, and recreation with clockwork regularity. The camp's meticulous record-keeping intake cards documenting everything from next of kin to musical instruments created an administrative precision that impressed even German officers trained in Prussian thoroughness. Breakfast arrived at 7 a.m. in mess halls that buzzed with the polyglot chatter of sailors from merchant vessels seized in American ports. The food represented the first daily reminder that their captivity operated by rules utterly foreign to European warfare. Rather than thin gruel or black bread, the internees received the same rations distributed to American soldiers. oatmeal, eggs, bacon, coffee, and white bread, in quantities that many hadn't seen since peacetime. "We ate better as prisoners than we had as free sailors," noted Bootsman Heinrich Weber in a letter to his brother in Bremen. The American mess sergeant seemed personally offended when men didn't finish their portions. He increased rations for anyone who complained of hunger and posted dietary schedules that ensured balanced nutrition. This wasn't charity, it was policy. The work assignments revealed another layer of American pragmatism that confounded German expectations. Rather than punitive labor designed to break spirits, internees found themselves assigned to tasks that utilized their professional skills while serving legitimate camp needs. At Hot Springs, former ship's carpenters built furniture for the expanding facility. Musicians organized into orchestras and bands. Engineers drafted improvement plans for camp infrastructure. Maschinenmat Ernst Hoffmann, who had served as chief engineer aboard the steamship König Wilhelm, found himself maintaining the camp's electrical systems work that paid 30 cents per day and allowed him access to technical manuals that kept his skills current. "They trusted me with dynamos and power lines," he wrote to his wife, "an enemy alien operating equipment that could disable the entire facility." The Americans either possessed supreme confidence in their security or supreme confidence in human nature. Both possibilities disturbed my understanding of warfare. The medical care provided the most profound challenge to German preconceptions about American character. When typhoid struck Hot Springs in August 1918, killing 17 internees in the span of 3 weeks, the camp's response revealed both organizational capacity and genuine humanitarian concern. Military doctors worked around the clock, treating both Americans and Germans with identical dedication, while the Red Cross coordinated additional medical supplies and personnel from civilian hospitals. Dr. Patterson sat beside my bunk for 6 hours during the crisis of my fever, recalled Musikmat Hans Weber, whose near-death experience became a turning point in his understanding of American values. He monitored my pulse, adjusted my medication, and spoke to me in broken German about my family. When I asked why he cared whether an enemy lived or died, he seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. "You're sick," he said. "I'm a doctor." As if that explained everything. The camp's response to the influenza pandemic of 1,918 further demonstrated American medical capabilities. When the deadly flu reached Fort Douglas in Utah, camp administrators implemented quarantine procedures, isolation wards, and treatment protocols that minimized casualties among both guards and prisoners. The survival rate among German internees actually exceeded that of many American civilian communities, a fact that created profound cognitive dissonance among men who had been told that democratic societies couldn't organize effective responses to crisis. Housing conditions varied across camps, but consistently exceeded international standards for prisoner accommodation. At Hot Springs, the converted hotel rooms provided privacy and comfort unknown in European military prisons. At Fort Oglethorpe, purpose-built barracks featured electric lighting, steam heat, and individual storage lockers. The sensory environment of these facilities, the smell of coal, oil lamps mixing with pine resin from mountain air, the sound of steam radiators clicking through winter nights, created an atmosphere of institutional competence rather than punitive confinement. "My bunk had clean sheets changed weekly," wrote Kapitän Zimmermann. "The mattress was thin but adequate, the blankets sufficient for mountain winters. The barrack smelled of soap and floor wax rather than unwashed bodies and despair." They maintained these facilities as if our comfort mattered, as if our dignity deserved preservation even in captivity. The postal system became a lifeline that revealed another dimension of American administrative efficiency. Letters from families in Germany arrived with remarkable regularity, passing through military censors who generally limited themselves to blocking tactical military information while preserving personal content. Care packages from the International Red Cross reached internees within weeks of being sent, their contents soap, tobacco, writing paper, books distributed with scrupulous fairness under American supervision. I received 43 letters from home during my internment, calculated Obermatt Grasshoff. Each one passed through American censors, who left polite notes explaining any deletions. They translated German phrases they couldn't understand, rather than simply blocking entire passages. This attention to detail, this respect for human connection, even in wartime, it suggested a society with resources to spare for individual dignity. The camp economies that developed around work assignments and rations created another source of bewilderment for German internees. Unlike European systems that use starvation and deprivation as control mechanisms, American camps allowed modest entrepreneurship and trade. Skilled craftsmen could earn extra rations by producing furniture or artwork. Musicians received small payments for entertainment services. Even minor violations of camp rules rarely resulted in reduced food rations, a policy that many Germans found impossibly lenient. By winter 1917, the rhythms of camp life had created an environment that many internees found more pleasant than their pre-war civilian existence in Germany's increasingly militarized society. The irony was not lost on men who had crossed the Atlantic expecting torture and found instead a systematic demonstration of democratic governance applied to enemy populations. Sunday afternoon, November 11th, 1917. In the converted ballroom of Hot Springs Mountain Park Hotel, 200 German internees sat in makeshift wooden chairs listening to a full orchestra perform Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The musicians, all former crew members from seized merchant vessels, played with instruments salvaged from their ships or provided by the American Red Cross. In the audience, Kapitän Heinrich Zimmermann closed his eyes and tried to reconcile the soaring music with his surroundings. Barbed wire visible through crystal-clear windows, American guards standing respectfully at attention during the performance. "We have created something impossible here," he wrote that evening. "An island of German culture maintained not in spite of our captors, but with their active encouragement. The Americans seem to believe that men remain human even in captivity, and they expect us to prove them right." The cultural renaissance that flourished in American internment camps during World War I represented one of the most remarkable aspects of the prisoner experience. Unlike European facilities where boredom and despair defined daily existence, American camps actively encouraged intellectual and artistic pursuits that maintain morale while demonstrating democratic values in action. At Fort Oglethorpe, the camp newspaper, Orgelsdorfer Eulenspiegel, became a weekly publication that rivaled professional journals in quality and circulation. Editor Lieutenant Werner Hoffmann, a former journalist from the Hamburg Press, assembled a staff of writers, illustrators, and satirists who produced content that was both entertaining and subversively intelligent. The paper's cartoons lampooned camp routine with gentle humor, while its essays explored philosophical questions about democracy, individual rights, and cultural identity. "The Americans read our newspaper before allowing distribution," Hoffmann noted in his editorial diary, "but they censored content only when it contained information that might aid enemy forces. Our satire about camp food, our jokes about American efficiency, our critiques of military bureaucracy, all passed without comment. They seemed to enjoy our irreverence, as if criticism strengthened rather than weakened their system." The theatrical productions that emerged in camps across the country revealed another dimension of American tolerance for creative expression. At Hot Springs, former stage performers from German passenger liners organized elaborate productions in the hotel's ballroom, performing everything from classical dramas to satirical revues that gently mocked both German and American cultural stereotypes. The camp commander not only permitted these performances, but often attended with his staff, applauding German humor with genuine appreciation. Bootsmann Karl Weber, who had worked as a lighting technician in Berlin before his maritime career, described the surreal experience of staging German theater for American audiences. We performed Goethe's Faust in the same ballroom where American officers held their weekly dances. They provided stage lights, helped construct scenery, and even learned to operate our lighting effects. Colonel Morrison asked intelligent questions about German literature and seemed genuinely interested in our artistic traditions. I had expected cultural suppression, not cultural exchange. The educational programs that developed organically within camp populations demonstrated both German intellectual curiosity and American administrative flexibility. At Fort Douglas, captured officers organized a comprehensive curriculum that included mathematics, engineering, languages, and philosophy. Classes met in mess halls during evening hours, using textbooks provided by the American Red Cross and supplemented with materials requested through the International Postal System. Oberleutnant Friedrich Schmidt, who had studied at Heidelberg before joining the Merchant Marine, established what amounted to a university extension program within the Utah camp. We had professors of philosophy, mathematics, and engineering among our numbers. Rather than allowing their knowledge to atrophy, the Americans encouraged us to share expertise through formal instruction. They provided blackboards, chalk, and even examination booklets. When I requested advanced mathematics texts, the camp librarian ordered them from American universities. The sports programs represented perhaps the most unexpected aspect of camp life. American Guards organized baseball games between internee teams and local military units, teaching German sailors a distinctly American sport while participating in friendly competition that transcended national boundaries. Soccer matches drew enthusiastic crowds of both prisoners and guards, with American soldiers learning European football techniques from their charges. Today we defeated the camp guards 3-to-1-inch football, recorded Matros Heinrich Koch in his diary. After the match, the American team captain congratulated our goalkeeper and asked him to teach defensive techniques to their squad. In Germany, such fraternization between guards and prisoners would be unthinkable. Here, it seemed natural that shared sport could build mutual respect, even between enemies. The libraries that internees established within their barracks became centers of intellectual life that sustained morale through the long months of captivity. Crates of German literature circulated through the camps, their pages bearing the fingerprints of homesick sailors seeking connection with their cultural heritage. Books arrived through Red Cross packages, personal correspondence, and even donations from German-American communities who saw education as a humanitarian necessity. Musikmaat Hans Weber cataloged the Hot Springs Library in meticulous detail. 284 volumes of German literature, 97 technical manuals, 43 works of philosophy, and 156 musical scores. The collection grew monthly through donations and purchases. Americans seemed to understand that books represented more than entertainment. They preserved the intellectual dignity of men far from home. The musical ensembles became the crown jewel of camp cultural life. Professional musicians among the internees formed orchestras, chamber groups, and choirs that performed weekly concerts for audiences that included both prisoners and American personnel. The quality of these performances often exceeded professional standards, with musicians who had trained in European conservatories bringing world-class talent to remote American mountain camps. Our Sunday concerts became social events that the entire camp anticipated, noted Concertmeister Otto Zimmermann. American officers brought their wives to hear German music performed by enemy aliens. The audience showed genuine appreciation for our artistic efforts, applauding with enthusiasm and requesting encore performances. Music, it seemed, could transcend the boundaries that politics created. The chess tournaments, literary discussions, and philosophical debates that filled evening hours revealed the intellectual caliber of many internees and the American commitment to maintaining their mental engagement. Rather than allowing prisoners to deteriorate through idleness, camp administrators actively encouraged activities that preserved cognitive function and social skills. By 1918, the cultural life within American internment camps had created communities that many prisoners found more intellectually stimulating than their pre-war civilian existence. The irony was profound. Men who had lost their freedom had gained opportunities for artistic expression, educational advancement, and cultural exploration that surpassed what most European working-class individuals could access in peacetime. This cultural renaissance served American interests by maintaining prisoner morale and preventing the despair that led to escape attempts and violence. But it also reflected deeper democratic values about human dignity, individual potential, and the power of education to transform lives even in the most challenging circumstances. November 11th, 1918. The armistice bells echoing across the mountains of North Carolina found Kapitän Heinrich Zimmermann standing at the window of his Hot Springs hotel room, watching American and German internees alike celebrate the end of a war that had transformed them all. In his final diary entry as a prisoner of war, he wrote words that captured the profound psychological shift experienced by thousands of German internees during their American captivity. "We came to this country as enemies and leave as witnesses. We have seen democracy function under pressure, observed prosperity without conquest, and experienced dignity preserved even in defeat. Germany lost more than battles. In this war, we lost our illusions about American weakness and our own inevitable superiority." The repatriation process that began in late 1918 revealed both the scale of American organizational efficiency and the unexpected reluctance of many internees to return to a Germany they no longer recognized. Processing 4,127 German prisoners and civilian internees through medical examinations, documentation reviews, and transportation arrangements required the same systematic approach that had characterized their initial internment. But now the efficiency served release rather than confinement. At Fort Oglethorpe, the camp newspaper Orgelsdorfer Eulenspiegel published its final edition in February 1919, featuring essays by internees reflecting on their American experience. Editor Werner Hoffmann's farewell editorial would later be quoted in academic studies of prisoner psychology. "We discovered that strength does not require cruelty, that efficiency does not demand inhumanity, and that victory does not necessitate vengeance. These lessons will return to Germany with us, carrying implications that extend far beyond this war." The medical clearances required for repatriation provided a final demonstration of American healthcare capabilities. Internees who had arrived malnourished and exhausted departed with clean bills of health, dental work completed, and chronic conditions treated. Many had gained weight during their captivity, a fact that astonished German officials who met the returning ships in Hamburg and Bremen. Dr. Friedrich Bauer, the camp physician at Hot Springs, documented the health improvements with clinical precision. Average weight gain among long-term internees, 23 pounds. Dental procedures completed, 847. Chronic conditions successfully treated, 312. We returned these men to Germany in better physical condition than when they arrived, despite 18 months of captivity. This outcome reflects both American medical capabilities and administrative priorities that valued human welfare over punitive detention. The personal effects that internees carried home told stories of cultural exchange that transcended wartime boundaries. Musical instruments bore the signatures of American soldiers who had learned to appreciate German classical traditions. Handmade furniture crafted during work details would grace German homes for decades. Books in English, acquired through camp libraries and educational programs, would introduce families to American literature and democratic philosophy. Musikmat Hans Weber packed his violin case with sheet music that documented his American experience. arrangements of American folk songs translated for German lyrics, musical compositions inspired by North Carolina mountain ballads, and harmony exercises developed with American musicians. My instrument carries melodies that bridge two cultures, proving that music speaks a language beyond nationalism. The correspondence networks established during internment continued long after repatriation, creating lasting connections between former enemies. American families who had sent care packages maintained relationships with German prisoners for decades, exchanging letters, photographs, and eventually visits that would span generations. The American Red Cross documented over 1,200 ongoing correspondences between former internees and American families as late as 1,925. Obermatt Friedrich Grasshoff maintained a 30-year correspondence with the Miller family of Asheville, North Carolina, who had sent Christmas packages to Hot Springs internees. They treated us as unfortunate young men rather than dangerous enemies. Their kindness created bonds that outlasted the political circumstances that brought us together. My children know American friends they have never met, connected through their father's experience of captivity that became education. The economic impact of repatriation on the former internees proved surprisingly positive. Many returned to Germany with skills acquired through American work programs, English language capabilities that opened international opportunities, and perspectives on industrial efficiency that would influence their post-war careers. Several dozen chose to emigrate back to America in the 1,922nd, using knowledge gained as prisoners to establish successful businesses and professional practices. Ernst Hoffman, the former ship's engineer who had maintained electrical systems at Hot Springs, returned to Hamburg with detailed knowledge of American industrial methods. I introduced manufacturing techniques observed in American camps to German factories during Reconstruction. The systematic approach to production, the emphasis on worker welfare, the integration of efficiency with humanity. These concepts seemed foreign in 1919, but proved essential for post-war recovery. The psychological transformation experienced by German internees extended beyond individual cases to influence broader cultural attitudes about democracy, international relations, and conflict resolution. Many former prisoners became advocates for peaceful cooperation between Germany and America, using their unique experiences to build bridges during the troubled interwar period. The camp newspapers, theatrical programs, and cultural artifacts preserved in American archives became historical documents that scholars would later use to understand the complex dynamics of captivity, cultural exchange, and democratic values in practice. The Drew University digital collections, which house extensive documentation from the Hot Springs camp, continue to attract researchers studying the intersection of warfare, human rights, and international law. Perhaps most remarkably, many former internees expressed gratitude for their American captivity, viewing it as an educational experience that broadened their understanding of democratic societies and human potential. This perspective, documented in letters, memoirs, and oral histories collected over subsequent decades, challenged conventional assumptions about prisoner psychology and international conflict. Kapitän Zimmermann's final assessment, written in 1925 for a German magazine article about his war experiences, captured the long-term impact of American treatment. We expected barbarism and encountered civilization. We anticipated revenge and received justice. We feared for our lives and discovered respect for human dignity. The America we experienced as prisoners contradicted every stereotype that had justified our nation's hostility. This revelation proved more transformative than any military defeat. The legacy of German internees in American camps during World War I extends beyond historical curiosity to offer insights into the power of humane treatment to transform enemies into allies, the effectiveness of democratic values in practice, and the possibility of maintaining civilization even in the midst of industrial warfare. Their story remains a testament to the idea that how societies treat their enemies reveals more about their character than how they celebrate their victories. In the end, America's secret weapon was not industrial might or military strategy, but the simple application of democratic principles to the treatment of enemy populations. The German internees who experienced this approach returned home as inadvertent ambassadors for democratic values, carrying with them proof that strength and humanity were not contradictory forces, but complementary aspects of a society confident in its own principles.